Shabbat Shalom. I'm Moreh Rapha'Yah. We're just about to commence this important Torah portion. Before we start off, just wanted to ask you, if you have not subscribed, please do so you can get the latest production. We always in the motion of bringing you the most of the Torah portions, teachings, production, videos. We have so many things going in this channel, and the important thing is to bring you the most that we can as far as growing on the Spirit, and that's what it's all about in this channel. Now, before we start off, I also want to tell you that if you want to help out to the cause here in this channel, please do so. We have links here down below, and you can help us out by giving your input in what we can do the most in our channel, so we can work on that regard. And also, if you want to help us out also financially, there is, any tzedakah, any contribution will help big time to this channel to bring you more productions. So let's just start off. Like I mentioned earlier, this Parashat Shoftim. Shoftim means judges. Judges, because the Creator knows very well that there has to be some kind of court. You have to understand this. There is not only courts in heavens, but also here on earth. And there is a dividing notion nowadays that we do not trust courts. The judicial system is very corrupt. And the reason for it is because judges, lawyers, and so forth, they get really greedy with money. And not only that, if you really think about how the swamp is being drained today in the United States, a lot of people are so corrupt that it's just unbelievable, so much corruption that is going on, that is being revealed in these latter days, that is just unimaginable. So, and do you imagine how the Creator set up Moshe and 70 members, which is called the Sanhedrin, the council, the judicial council, to make the right decisions? But the way Yahweh told Moshe to do so is to bring these people in to be wise in the judgments calls that they were going to execute according to the Torah, not according to what they thought, but according to the Torah. They needed to bring these judgments. So, but there is a good judgment and there is a evil judgment, and we're going to make a distinction to one and two. But let's just start off. In the book of Devarim, or Deuteronomy 16, verse 18, Shoftim, judges and officers, you will get for all the doors that Yahweh your Yil Almighty is giving you, tribe by tribe, and they will judge the people with righteous judgment. Every time you see the word doors on your doors and the doors of the city, it always referred to some kind of judgment, some kind of judge, somebody who will be appointed to those doors to make the right judgment, and will be according to the Torah that judgment will be given. Here we see judges, Shoftim, and officers, two different things. One thing is very understandable, that when Moshe was by himself giving this type of judgment to the people, we have to understand very importantly that when Moshe was dealing with these people every single day, it was about 2.5 million people that he needed to deal with. And there was a whole lot of weight on him. It's so much responsibility, not only with people, but with a lot of things going on, to the point where his father-in-law, Ruel, or Hithro, he said to him, you will die soon. You are wearing out fast, because you have to deal with all these people. You're not going to last long. And he gave him a very good advice. You need to get some people to help out. You need to delegate responsibility to people who have the ability to do these judgment calls according to what the Torah says. And exactly what he did. The Sanhedrin, the council that became in the first century later, became something that is well known. And even our Jewish brothers, they acknowledge this, that came from the advice that Jethro gave to Moshe, which is a very, very good, and no wonder why there is a parasha called Jethro, because of the same situation. Now, 122 verse 2 of Psalms, the Elim, our feet were standing at your gates, O Jerusalem. Why does he always mention the gates of Jerusalem? And the reason for it is because there were judges judging there. It is very, very important. Not only that, the doors of Jerusalem were something that we have to understand, that not only it protects the city, but also there is a judgment as well. Deuteronomy 30 verse 2. And Shabbat will return, that's what it means, to Yahweh their Ayil Almighty, and they will render attention, so that he has said, which will be exactly what I'm ordering to you today, to your children, with all your heart and his whole being. So here in chapter 30, and let me just pause here for a moment, with the word Weshatab, which means will return, that's where we get the word Teshuvah. This very chapter, it's prophetic chapter that yield to the house of Israel, us, the house of Ephraim, all of us that come from the nations. And one of the most important things that we have to endure and get into our minds, it's that our Creator already foretold the return of the Ephraim, the return of the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Here it says very clear, the word Weshatab, which means to return, not only means to return, but in the secular world, in the religious world, in the Christian world, means they will repent. But in Hebrew means they will return to our Creator. One thing that we have to understand is that when we come back to our Creator, we need to be sure in what we have believed. Now that we already tired of so much Christianism, so much paganism, so much idolatry, it is time for us to come back to Torah. And that's what this channel is all about. These doors are not just the physical doors, but also the doors of the ear, the doors of the mouth, the doors of the eyes. These are the other doors are more important than the physical door. Why? Because in every door that you are reading in this very moment are the doors that we are exposed every single day of our life. Especially with technology now in our hands, our phones, everything comes in and sometimes it comes out. Whatever comes in here or here, it comes out through the other door. Remember what Mashiach Yahushua said? Now, it doesn't defile the man that what goes outside, but what comes from the inside out. And exactly right. Those doors we need to guard with ourselves so much, because if we do not guard these doors, it will be very, very hard for us to impregnate the teaching of our Creator from the Torah. It is important, it is a must for us to remember that. These doors that were in Jerusalem, were very important because people came in, not just regular local people, but also foreigners, strangers. And they needed to be filtered in what they were bringing in. The same thing with us. We need to know, we need to filter what comes into our lives. into our eyes, into our ears, because it might harm us, the same as the city. People who usually comes in the city, sometimes they come with a hidden agenda. And the same thing is what we get from the media nowadays or any other medium. These doors, once again, where they needed to deal with one way or other. Now let's jump into a different gear. Chapter 16:16 of Devarim or Deuteronomy, Shalosh Plamim. Shalosh Plamim means 3 times or appearances. A year, all his men will appear in the presence of Yahweh, his Ahil Almighty, in the place that he chooses. And the first one is in the Feast of Matzah, the Feast of the Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Shabuot, the Feast of the Weeks, or what they call it today, the Feast of Pentecost, and the Feast of Sukkot, or the Feast of the Tents. They shall not stand before Yahweh, and the word is regam. Regam means an empty condition. We are to be called to appear before Yahweh in these festivals. Now, here in this very verse, it says 3 times in a year. 3 pilgrimages. So you understand what I'm saying. What the Creator meant here in this very verse is that it doesn't mean that there are 3 festivals. What it means is that they need to go 3 journeys. These 3 journeys, remember that not everybody live in Jerusalem. They live outside Jerusalem. They needed to come to Jerusalem to celebrate the festivals. How many festivals are there? There are 7. The festival of Pesach, Passover, the festival of unleavened bread, that's the second, the festival of Shabuot or Pentecost or weeks, the festival of Yom Teruach, the festival of the blowing of the shofar, the festival of Yom Kippurim or the festival of the forgiveness, the festival of Sukkot, the festival of the tent, and the last one is the festival of Shemini Atzeret, or the festival of the 8th day. 7 festivals that the Torah speaks of. But in these 7 festivals, the 3 pilgrimages are the first one. They need to come up to Jerusalem in the festival of Pesach, and that night commence the festival of unleavened bread. That's the first one. 50 days later, they need to come back again for the festival of Shabuot. And the third time will be Yom Teruach, Yom HaKippurim, Sukkot, and the feast of the 8th day. All those were very nearby, close to each other. Question is, why do you, if I'm an Israel, and I am an Israel, why am I supposed to go back home and come back and go home and come back? That's why a lot of people stay in Jerusalem for the entire time, especially in the 3rd journey. So that's one of the reasons why Yahweh says 3 times. But that doesn't mean that there are 3 festivals. Some people take it like that, but that's not what it is. Please take notes of what I'm saying right now so you don't think that I'm making this up. This is well known throughout history. Even our Jewish brothers, they are very aware of this. Let's continue. Chapter 23, verse 14 of Exodus, Shemot, Shalosh Regalim. Earlier was Shalosh Peamim, but in this instance it says Shalosh Regalim, which means 3 times you will celebrate me. That's what it means, 3 times, 3 instances. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up, brothers and sisters, is because there are something encoded here. Let's read this first. Actually, let's go into the next one. 23 verse 1 of Vayikra Leviticus. Yahweh said to Moshe, says to the source, speaks to the sons of Israel, the Moedim, the 3 appointments or the seasons of Yahweh, who shall proclaim as my Mikra, which means convocations. set apart convocations or convocations kadoshim are my appointed times. These appointed times are something that the Creator wants us to remember. But one thing I do want to acknowledge is the word moedim, which is over here. Let me point it with the laser. Moedim means appointed times or seasons, but this word moedim also comes from the word moed, which means a testimony. But if you notice at the very end, the root of that is witness. Somebody who's a witness. Somebody who's testifying, in other words. So these festivals are some kind of witness of what? That is the question. Look at what the Berit Chadashah, look at the letters of Shaul says to John. 1 of John 5:6. He is the one who came by the water and blood. Yeshua HaMashiach, not by water only, but by water and blood. And who else? And the Ruach HaKodesh, the Spirit of Yahweh, who's bearer of testimony. Do you see that? Because the Ruach, the Spirit of the truth, or the Spirit of the Met, there are 3 witnesses. You see that? 3 witnesses, exactly what we started earlier, 3 times a year. The Ruach, the Spirit, the water, and the blood, there are 3 that are agreed. In other words, what we see here is what is called today Shalosh Edim, which is the 3 witnesses. The first one is the Pesach, which is unleavened bread, is the witness of the blood because of the lamb was slain. Shavuot is the weeks of the testimony of the 10 words or the Ruach Kodesh, or the Spirit of Yahweh was given. And the third is the Sukkot, which is the branches or the tents, is the witness of water with the levitation of water. Remember that in the first century, that's what they did. They went to the waters of Siloam, they got water and they brought it to the temple. All these, we're not making this up. All these, our ancestors knew about this. But the way they speaks of, especially what is called today, let me just pause here for a second. It is now well understanding, especially with the Christian world, and it's even in the Messianic world, do not understand this very encoded testament of the Torah. The Torah speaks very much about so many things, but the way in the first century they speak about, they already knew about this. But the way they encode it is something that we need to look in the Torah. Why are they talking about this? Because they knew the Torah. But the way they speak of, we need to understand Torah to understand these sayings. Otherwise, you won't be able to understand at all. The Pesach, we know that is the testimony of and the Redeemer of Mashiach to our lives. Because of him, we have access to the Father. Numbers 11:16 about Midbar, Yahweh said to Moshe, "Bring me 70 of the elders of Israel, people whom you recognize as elders of the people and officers of them. Bring them to the Mishkan Ha'edu, which is the tent of the testimony, and have them stand there with you." They were going to be confirmed. They were going to be set as the Sanhedrin, as the elders of Israel. These wise people, these elders, were going to be anointed to help out Moshe on what his task was going to be. Chapter 89, verse 14. Righteousness, tzedek, and mishpatim, and judgment are the foundation of your throne. The rachem, the pity, and the emet, the truth, will go before your face. Why is David is talking about this, the way he's talking to, is because we have to understand that David knew the Torah. He executed the Torah. And by that, I mean that he knew the Torah not by heart, but he actioned it. He put it to work. Let me give you a few examples that a lot of people don't know. David, even though he was a king, he knew that there were poor people. And the way he executed the power of his throne is that some people, let's put it this way so you understand what I'm saying. This guy probably owed $10,000, and he went to the debtor and he said, how much he owes you? Well, $10,000. Okay, I'll give you $20,000 and you can go in peace. That's why he executed the mishpatin, which is the judgment, and the tzedek, which is the righteousness. This very verse not only applies to him, but exceptionally to our Mashiach. Let's continue. When there was a strife among brothers, there needed to be some kind of judgment. They needed to take him to the judge. But something that is very important that I wanted to bring is that in order for that judgment to be fair, remember that the Sanhedrin was 70 elders. But how about if the 70, because it's a pair number, it's not unpair, they needed to have a breaker, a number of the breaker, and that was Moshe. 70 plus 1 is 71 elders. And the reason for it was unpair number is because they needed to break that tie. Remember, if the 35 were against this person, and if the other 35 were in pro of this person, there was a tied judgment, and it needed to be a righteous judgment, and therefore Moshe came to being to make that break on that tide. That's why it was always unpair number. Let's continue. But before that, I do want to acknowledge this. I will put a link at the very end of this Torah portion, and please take a look. I don't know if you already watched this production, and it's titled Yahweh is not Elohim. And the reason why I bring this up is because the next I'm going to be talking about this very verse, and it is not well understood outside in the Christian world and even our Jewish brothers. The reason for it is because I want you to watch that video at the very end. You'll see what I'm saying. One of the titles of Yahweh is not Elohim. The actual word is Ayil. The actual title is Ayil. But please watch that video at the very end of the Torah portion, the Parashat, and you will see what I'm saying. Please take notes in everything that we are bringing up, because it will help you out and growth in the Torah. So let's go ahead. Chapter 82, verse 1. Ayil Almighty rises in Adat in the congregation of Ayil Almighty. And there in the midst, he pronounces sentence to Ayul. You see that? To the judges. Okay? Now, the reason why I bring this up, because Mashiach knew about this. 10:34, John, Yeshua answered them, it is not written in your Tanakh, in your Hebrew Bible, scriptures, you people are Ayuls, are judges, are masters. And exactly was actually quoting what we read earlier in chapter 82. Verse 35 of the same chapter, if those Ayul judges, masters said to whom the word of Ayil Almighty came, and the scriptures cannot be annulled. The reason why I bring this up is because they were accusing him of being the Almighty. But you have to understand this, that he also came to execute the word of Yahweh. He came to be a judge. He came to be somebody in the midst of the Sanhedrin, just like the Moshe was. Okay, so chapter 7, verse 1, let me give you more verses so you don't think I'm making this up. Verse 1 of chapter 7 of Shemot or Exodus, but Yahweh said to Moshe, I have put you in the place of Ayul, judges, masters, for Pharaoh, and Aharon, your brother, will be your prophet. And the reason why I'm bringing all these verses is for you to understand something. Moshe was a type of a king, a type of a judge, okay? And especially the Melachim, every king, they have their own prophet. See, if you pay attention to Yahweh speaking to Moshe, Moshe was not taking orders from the Pharaoh. Pharaoh was taking orders from Moshe, like a king. It was the other way around. And who was Moshe's prophet? His brother. Remember that every prophet had a prophet. David had a prophet. Shaul, the first king of Israel, had a prophet. Every king had a prophet. And not only every king was a king, but he was also a judge. He executed judgment. Let me put an example. Solomon, remember the first thing the first act, the first deed that he did when he took over as a king? Remember those two women that they had this child, one of them killed his son in the middle of the night by sleeping on top of him, right? And then she said, no, that's my kid, but she already killed the other kid. He executed judgment there, okay, because he was a judge, but also he was a king. So let me give you another verse. Chapter 19, verse 15. One witness alone will not be sufficient to condemn a person of any offense or sin of any kind. The matter will be settled only if there is 2 or 3 witnesses testifying against him. And it is exactly what was in the time of Moshe. If these people were apparently, and I said apparently, quote unquote, witnesses, then they needed to bring this person, take him to the a very high place, throw him, push him on the ditch. Person probably was still alive by the time he landed on the floor from the high place. And then the same people that were accusing him, they needed to stone him to death. And then the rest of the people, they were going to stone him also. The reason why it was done like this is because this needed to be something internal to the people that were accusing this apparent person. Something internal was dictating them, are you sure you're doing the right judgment? That's why there needed to be 2 or 3, but the first ones, they need to be them to do the actual deed of judgment. Now, let me give you, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it applies to Mashiach. Remember when they brought a person that apparently committed a sin? But first, chapter 17, verse 7 of Devarim, these witnesses will be the first to stone him to death. Then all the people will stone him. Thus you will put the end to this wickedness among you. But once again, you see that the witnesses first will stone him first. Now, I can imagine in the first century how many people, quote unquote, were assigned to do these kind of deeds falsely. Not legit, but falsely. And they were paid by the Sanhedrin, especially to our Mashiach. Remember when they brought a woman that apparently, supposedly this woman had committed adultery, but they didn't even bring the the man that was also involved. They only brought the woman. And the reason for it is because they want to make him fall. Chapter 8, verse 6 and on, they said of John, they said to this trap to set on for him so they could have grounds and accuse him. But Yeshua bent down and began to write in the dust with his finger. And as they persisted in asking him, he straightened up and said, "Whosoever among you is without sin, let him be the first to throw a stone at it." Then he stooped down and continued to write in the dust. The question is two things. He already knew what was the deal, what was all about. He knew that whatever they were accusing this woman, there were paid witnesses. Okay? Because if it was true, then they will continue. It was unjust judgment because the man wasn't even there. The apparent man that caught with cheating. Okay? Second, Mashiach already knew their hearts. They were just to set a trap on him. 17 verse 3. The question is, what was he writing with his finger in the ground? Those who leave you will be inscribed in the dust because they have forsaken Yahweh, the source of living water. What was the Mashiach was writing in the ground? He was writing the names of those who were fake accusers, fake witnesses. They were making an evil witness and a false witness. Remember the 10 words, Shemot chapter 20, where he says, "Do not bear false witness." It's exactly what they were doing. They were paid false witness to make them fall. Chapter 13, verse 9 of Ezekiel, "And will stretch out my hand against those prophets who see false visions and those who utter vanities. They should not be permitted in the council of my people, nor shall they be entered into the register of the house of Israel, nor they shall enter into the land of Israel. Then you will know that I am Yahweh." See what we see here? The names of these people, the names of those who are not executing judgment or right judgment are being taken out from the book of life. And the reason why Mashiach was writing on the dust is because he was writing in their tombs. He was writing in their deaths. Now, let's talk about the finger that was using Mashiach. And look at what the Torah speaks about the finger. 31 verse 18, we're almost done, we're almost closing. Shemot or Exodus, when he had finished speaking to Moshe on Mount Sinai, Yahweh gave him the 2 tablets of the gospel, testimony. Stone tablets inscribed by the finger of Yahweh Almighty. The finger of Almighty. Who was the finger? Or what was the finger? It was the Mashiach himself. Exodus 8:19. Look at what happened. Then the magicians said to Pharaoh, "This is the finger of Yahweh Almighty." But Pharaoh was made hard-headed, so he did not listen to them, just as Yahweh have said it would happen. See that? The finger was all the time Mashiach, the Mashiach of Israel. Not only that, look at what Mashiach said to himself. Luke 11 verse 20. "But if I cast out demons by the finger of Yahweh, then the kingdom of Yahweh has come upon you." You see, Mashiach himself said that he was the finger. He was the acting power of Yahweh on earth. Just as Moshe was also as well, Mashiach came to execute the power of Yahweh here on earth. Once again, brothers and sisters, we see how we're supposed to be careful on the things that we say, the things that we execute, because we just never know what could happen when we open our mouth or make a judgment or an unjust judgment. All this is for our benefit. Sometimes we love to point the fingers without even knowing the other fingers are pointing at us. Sometimes we like to judge people, not thinking that we are more at fault, more flaws than that person that we are pointing the finger at. We need to be very careful of that. I'm Moreh Rapha'Yah. We'll see you next time. Please subscribe if you have not, so we can bring more productions in the future so you guys can enjoy. We'll see you next time. Shabbat Shalom.